Let's just see what it looks like.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Love of Life podcast. Here we are again. It's been a long time.
It's been a hot minute.
What does hot minute mean?
I don't know.
Hot minute's a weird thing.
It is kind of a weird thing. It's a phrase, though. I mean,
yeah.
It's been a while.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, but we were in the middle of a really good conversation, which is why we're just like sitting on our couch and gonna do this. Because all of a sudden I was like, this should be a podcast because what we're talking about is really good. So kind of go back. What were you saying? We're talking about, I don't know, remember what we
Christ
started.
is the true light that gives light to every man who comes into the world.
Yeah, you started saying that you saw a video or something where a lot of maybe famous people.
Oh, yeah. So, like, you know, guys like Russell Brand,
Mm-hmm.
He's apparently a Christian now, which, you know, if he is, that's wonderful. That's really great. But there's this weird form of syncretism that seems to be going around where the people are mixing Christ with words like enlightenment, and, you know, it's very new agey, the way that they're talking about Christ, which, again, if Russell Brand is a Christian now, amen, that's wonderful.
Yeah, he could be a very baby Christian.
And he could be a very baby Christian. But if that being said, there's just this massive misunderstanding, misappropriating of Christ, who he's the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but through him, in a sense of, well, I can follow Jesus and Buddha, like the podcast we heard today on Tucker Carlson with a guy named Tucker Max, who essentially is like, there's no difference between Christ's words and Buddha. And it's like Christ's words are very exclusive.
Yeah.
That he is the only way. He's the only source of truth. So, yeah.
Yeah, but you were actually saying just how potent and cool the gospel is.
Yes, it's potent and cool.
Well, you were saying about, because we talked about Russell Brand and all that, but then just there does seem to be some shifting, some people really truly maybe potentially waking up and seeing the light of the truth of the gospel.
Yeah, so like we saw Richard Dawkins, prominent atheist, who basically recently said that he would rather live in a Christian world than a Christless world, a world without
Christianity.
Without Christianity.
Without Christians.
I think he may have actually been juxtaposing Christianity with the Muslim world as well.
He'd rather live in a place that had Christian culture.
Right.
Because than anything else.
Yeah. Because he sees the fruits of Christianity as being good. Like, he hates the tree, he hates Christ, but he loves the fruit. Right? And that's the thing with Christianity. It doesn't just affect the individual soul in the person of me, Jesus, in my prayer closet. It affects the world. It affects hospitals, because when you have Christians who work in hospitals, they work as unto Christ and not as unto man. And in all the vocations. It's like when you have Christians, you have people that want to be honest with their employers, who realize that they're the true person that they answer to is God himself.
Yeah.
So they want to
nice neighbors.
It makes for nice neighbors and nice people, and people that don't want to kill you and hang you up when they disagree with you or do something to you.
Yeah, and specifically hospitals are an outworking of Christian thought, of Christian ideas.
Yeah.
Expound on that a little.
Yeah.
You read about that in Dominion?
Yeah, Tom Holland's book Dominion talks about how hospitals are essentially, it is a Christian idea in many ways to help the vulnerable, help the helpless, help the sick. You know, you may have had a little bit of that in Greek and Roman times, but predominantly it is Christian thought and Christian culture that has given us medicine, given us the just the care that you would have for somebody who is sick and needs some type of help. So, yeah, and not only that, think about this, too. The names of all these hospitals. They may be changing the names now to certain things, but a lot of these are St. John's or St. Luke's Hospital, at least here in St. Louis. Like there's all of these various saints that they're attributed to.
Named after apostles.
Right. So it's not like they're not named after prominent atheists. What was the book Psychological Seduction by Kilpatrick?
Oh, yeah.
Where he talked about how, we have all of these various
holy days.
Holy days.
Holidays.
Holidays and holy days. And, when we think about Christmas, even for those that are not Christian, it's the happiest day of the year in many respects. And, we're never going to have I can't remember the name of the person that he said. What was it? He named a prominent...
Like Nietzsche or something?
Maybe it was Nietzsche. And he said, we're never going to have a Nietzsche day. Like, that's never going to happen.
Or Jung.
Carl Jung. A Jungian day or whatever. Like, we're never going to have that. If you think about why we have these specific days, these holidays or holy days, like, it's systemically because of Christ, because of the good news, because of the actual gospel that has been changing the world for 2,000 years and is continuing to do so, and is going to continue throughout however long the course of history lasts.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Christ really does bring light into the world.
Yes. Christ is the light of the world. And, even though the darkness doesn't understand it, John 1:5, the light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood it or comprehended it. There's still this measure of this light that is perceived by all men, regardless if they know Christ or not. So it's a good thing, so much so that atheists like Richard Dawkins can say, yeah, give me Christian society, please. Like, I don't want Christian society to really go away.
I don't want to bow down to Christ or, become a Christian, but yeah, I want a culture that's impacted and influenced by Christianity. I want neighbors who are Christians. I want to be surrounded by Christian capital. That's just, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's really crazy.
Also, when people meet God through psychedelics, just to jump topics, but it was part of the same interview with Tucker Carlson and Tucker Max. Because at one point, Tucker Max offhandedly mentions God, so Tucker, wow, this is getting confusing. Carlson picks up on that.
Because they're both Tuckers.
They're both Tuckers, yeah.
I don't know the name of... I've never met a Tucker.
No, me either.
And it's really funny that two Tuckers were talking to each other.
Yeah.
On a podcast.
And do they tuck their shirts in?
Just in
You're at Tucker.
Okay, that's funny.
Yeah. So Tucker Carlson picks up that he offhandedly, Max, mentions God. And so he wants him to talk about that. And then Max is talks about how he was doing some therapy. He's not a drug user, but some therapy through psychedelics, guided stuff to work out emotional past hurts and issues and stuff. And he's like, I had an experience and I met God, and didn't say really what God, just God, and felt one with nature and some stuff like that. And then he's also that's when he said he thinks, Buddha and Christ basically said the same things. And there's something else he said that was really interesting.
Well, he said he met God through LSD.
Right.
But then he went on to say that he has no interest in religion or dogma of any kind.
Yeah. He doesn't need any dogma. Some people that works for them, but not for him. It's just he had an experience. So.
Which, then he went on to affectionately talk about Christ. But Christ says that if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. My commandments are not burdensome, he says. But if you don't want to follow Christian dogma, then you don't want to follow Christ's commandments.
So
then you don't know or want to follow Christ.
Right. Yeah, you can't have it one way or the other. But also, if you meet God through psychedelics, what are you actually meeting?
You're probably meeting demonic entities. Yeah.
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 Which is creepy.
Which there's a great episode that you had mentioned that we listened to a while back of Haunted Cosmos, because they did a whole LSD thing, talked about drugs and stuff
there's
like that.
Really similar experiences that people have who trip on psychedelics, who like have some sort of spiritual experience, like I don't know, some sort of, they attribute it to like God or a higher power, but it's definitely demonic, and there's like different attributes that are consistent kind of across them that are creepy, and does give them like this sense of an experience with something higher, but then it ends up like really poorly for them.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah,
Kind of an opening up.
Yeah, typically the demonic entity wants you to give them something. They offer something. They offer you something as the user, but then they always take more than what you were really wanting to give. There's always an exchange, and it's usually typically it's the person who's using that is the one that loses in the end. I never want to do LSD.
No.
Do you?
No. No. I mean, it's so weird, so that it's mind altering in the way that it is reality altering, and I don't know. I guess I don't understand, especially people that are trying to use it in a guided way for something. Like, what are they reaching for? Something, I guess, like otherworldly, but it doesn't seem like a good way to do it.
I think when you're seeking truth, if you don't really start at the premise of the Word of God and His gospel, I think it's easy to probably reach for other things in the name of, hey, I'm trying to find something. I'm trying to reach for God. So, you reach for drugs. You reach for things that do change your consciousness or allow you to trip and go into a different state of mind. And then too, I mean, if you see things or you hear things, that could get really tricky really fast. But the Word of God says that even if an angel of light were to appear from heaven and preach a different gospel, let him be eternally condemned. Meaning, I mean, I take that as if he does this, meaning it's possible that this could happen, and that and very well it could happen through LSD or through some other drug, psychedelics of some kind.
Actually, that thought about if even an angel comes and preaches another gospel, wherever I was listening to the Bible in the Old Testament this morning, it was talking about if another nation comes to you and says, hey, let's go follow these guys that you do not know. Like, obviously, don't do that.
Right.
But it's kind of a similar idea of if you're presented with other gods to go and follow, like, don't do it. It will be destruction. It will be death.
Yeah.
It echoes that.
Yeah.
I never caught that before.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, that's not good.
No, it's not good. Don't do it.
Yeah, don't do that. Anything else that we've been thinking or talking about in the past little bit?
Probably a million.
Feels like there's more. Anytime I get on a soapbox, you're like, hey, that's a podcast.
Yeah, you get on a lot of soapboxes.
I don't know.
What else have you gotten on a soapbox about lately?
A lot of things, probably.
Yeah. Well, there's like the whole talk about Christian nationalism and like that being an interesting term that is being used politically, but then, some Christians saying, okay, we'll get behind that term because it's not that bad if you explain it. Other terms you can't get behind, namely Doug Wilson is saying that, but you just showed me a clip from MSNBC where the lady is basically trying to make these two categories and saying Christianity is one thing, but Christian nationalists, that's another thing. Like, these are people who like are separate from Christians, and can you believe it?
Yeah.
They believe that their rights do not come from Congress or from the government. They come from God.
How dare we?
So scary. Like, these are Christian nationalists. They think their rights come from God. Like, that's so twisted.
Yeah. It's really nonsense. Well, I mean, even historically,
every Christian should believe that their rights come from God because they do. And yeah, historically, our nation understood that. Our founding fathers understood.
How many? How many were Orthodox Christians? Remember the number? 50 out of 55?
50 out of 55 were like...
They were not deists.
Christians, not deists. There was 2 that were deists.
Two that were deists.
I don't remember what the other 3 were. Do you remember? Maybe they were all different things.
I don't know. But the point is, majority, heavy majority, professing Orthodox Christians. You know?
Yeah. Revisionist history is a huge problem.
Yeah.
It's a huge problem.
Oh, I know one of the things I got on a soapbox about was we don't have any founding mothers.
Oh.
We have founding fathers.
This is true.
Because back then, we had an understanding of the roles of manhood and womanhood. So, yeah, that was interesting. But anyway, no. Let's go back to Christian nationalism. No, not right now. Let's go back to Christian nationalism.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is a term, especially during this political season, that is they're trying to throw that on Christians, real, what I would call at least real Christians, and then somehow if you're not a Christian nationalist, you are, you're in the Russell Moore camp, you're in the David French world, which is basically bowing the knee to leftism and wokeism and just complete nonsense and tomfoolery. And then anybody else who thinks their rights come from God is, absolutely crazy. Christian nationalists, they're not even real Christians. They're trying to make this weird delineation right now between Christian nationalists and Christians. And whatever term they're going to end up with how they define Christians, it's going to be like the most awful Episcopalian woman preacher, those are the Christians. And everybody else who's even remotely Orthodox, you guys are the Christian nationalists, and Christian nationalists need to be burned at the stake. Because I think that's what they're really trying to do. And maybe not literally, but for sure in some way, they're going to try and
blacklist them.
They're going to blacklist what I would call real Christians, real Orthodox Christians. But they're obfuscating truth. They're obfuscating the gospel. And, they're wily. They're conniving.
They are. And it seems like they're very powerful, and they've taken over a lot of spheres that Christians have kind of backed off from in the last several decades. I think what I find so encouraging, though, is just back to the potency of the gospel.
Yeah.
And how, like, with God, the math doesn't always add up. Like, not that with God 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4, because it always does. But what I'm saying is he takes our little bit of faithful obedience and he can multiply it.
Yeah.
So if we as individuals are serving him, loving him as families, as fathers, as mothers, we're teaching our children, we are at our post, being faithful, studying his word, walking in his ways, like, God can take that and do amazing things, overturn evil. Like, what was the thing I made you listen to again about Spurgeon's life?
Oh, it was George Grant's
biography. An end of a talk George Grant did on Spurgeon, where, do you remember the story?
No, go ahead, tell it.
I can't remember who it was, but there was this young preacher who was ready to give up preaching because,
Oswald Chambers'
grandson.
Something to
grandfather.
do with... Grandfather.
Oswald Chambers' grandfather.
Yeah.
Was a preacher and a pastor, and he felt like, nothing that he was doing was gaining any traction. It wasn't working out. So he came to Spurgeon and was like, I'm just ready to give up. I think I just need to do something else. And Spurgeon's like, well, what did you expect? Like, were you expecting, lives to change and your community to be shaped and, people to turn to Christ and, things to be so different? He's like, yeah, you're right. I wasn't expecting all that. And Spurgeon's like, well, that was your problem, because the gospel swallows evil. Like, if you're not expecting that God is going to change your community, that's going to change people's lives and families, like, then you're not understanding the power of the gospel and what God can do. So I loved that. It's like, okay, just remember, because you feel overwhelmed, like, what can we do? There's so much bad, there's so much evil. But it's like, well, you can love your spouse well, you can diligently love and teach your children, you can do good at your job, you can do, with the things that are before you, you can be faithful. And God will do great things with that. Go to church faithfully, worship him, obey his commands, obey Christ's commands.
Yeah.
And he'll do amazing things.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, that's really great. All right, is that it for now?
I think so. Yep, for now.
Okay, great.
Okay.
All right.
See ya.
See ya.